Hello and welcome to the Go for Ball podcast. I'm Big Italy 42, joined again by Scott Malwick at Sports 25 to Life, and we're here talking about some hot hitters, cold hitters, trends, as we have been since the beginning of the season, once a week now, and hopefully we've been able to help you trend towards some guys that are going up, get away from some guys going down, and maybe we get to make fun of Chase Utley a little bit more in tonight's show. So we'll see how that goes. But where do you want to start? You want to start catcher or you want to start outfield?
Let's just go through catcher real quick. We'll get to outfield at the end.
All right, that works. All right, starting off with catcher here. Not a lot to say. If you ever watch any of our shows ever, which I'm guessing you do if you're watching this one, Stephen Vogt is a guy we talk about a ton. Russell Martin is starting to catch up to him, but outside of Russell Martin, I mean, it's Stephen Vogt, Russell Martin, and pretty much everyone else so far this year. As far as power and average go, I mean, Stephen Vogt having a monster season, batting .341. He's got a .459 WOBA, walk and strikeout rate, both around 14%. I mean, just a crazy good season so far for him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic. Not a ridiculous batting average on balls in play, only .338. So, I mean, it looks pretty sustainable. He's taking a ton of pitches. I think that means he's seeing the ball well. About a 14% walk and strikeout rate, which I'll take any day of the week. 318 isolated power. I mean, that's going to come down a little bit for him, but I mean, he's looked great, and 7 home runs. I mean, I think he can easily get to 20, 25 this year. He's going to have a fantastic season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And Russell Martin, a guy not necessarily hitting for big average yet, but showing off a lot of power recently. Even has a couple stolen bases, which is pretty unlike him, but certainly helps that the bats around him have been getting going recently. And we obviously have to mention now Yasmani Grandal, who's absolutely been on fire. 8 RBI game the other day, 2 home runs, both of them late in the game, but still, I mean, you can't deny what this guy's doing right now. 16.1% walk rate, 233 ISO. I mean, he's just mashing the ball, and that Dodgers lineup is just absolutely terrifying. Outside of Jimmy Rollins, top to bottom.
I mean, he's been fantastic. There's a couple other guys up here swinging the bats pretty well. Wilson Ramos hitting .319, Derek Norris hitting .311, Salvador Perez hitting .308. These guys just don't have the same power as some of these other guys. I mean, they're fine when they're hitting decently high in the order. I've been using Derek Norris a bit when he's been hitting in the 2-hole, just because, I mean, you get 4 or 5 at-bats out of a guy hitting 300, and you're usually sitting pretty good. Ramos and Perez are both guys stuck in the 7th hole, though, and despite how well they've been hitting, it's tough to use them when they're all the way down there. But Buster Posey, guy that's, I mean, he's hitting .275 right now, only 4 home runs. Giants lineup hasn't really gotten it going. He's a guy that you expect to turn it around and have a nice .290 season probably with 25 home runs or so. But, I mean, he's towards the bottom here as far as qualified guys go.
Yeah, and a guy that I liked a lot last year, he was like the de facto men punt guy on draft day, FanDuel, everywhere. Caleb Joseph finally starting to get a nice lineup spot. He's batting 8th or 9th now. He's been batting 6th recently, and I love him as a cheap play right now. I mean, he's got an ISO of almost 200, 3 homers on the year, batting almost 300. So if he can keep it going, he's one of those guys that, you know, there's not usually many options at catcher. If he keeps batting 6th, he's a guy you can sneak in there under the radar a lot of nights.
Yep, definitely.
All right, that's going to be about it for catcher. We'll talk about Mike Zunino and his high score with strikeout rate at 34.8%. I mean, he's not even the 3 outcomes guy because he doesn't really walk. And he doesn't really hit many home runs anymore. I mean, he's got 3 home runs, so he's
he's got 2 outcomes: strikeout or hopefully put the bat on the ball.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad, but I mean, they know what he is. That's the type of player he is. He was never. I mean, I think he played for Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
I think he was a pretty good hitter in the minors. It's just, I don't know, maybe he's trying too hard. He's still young. We'll cut him some slack this year, but 34% next year. We're going to keep talking some trash, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to first base, where no surprise. Another Dodgers player right up at the top, Adrian Gonzalez. It's getting to be a boring story by now. He's just continuing to dominate. ISO of 355, 9 homers, 24 RBIs. He's scoring a ton of runs. I mean, it looks like he's leading all first basemen in all of these categories, I think. Runs, home runs, RBIs.
Yep.
I mean, it's
pretty close.
It's crazy.
I think the only guy ahead of him in RBIs is Teixeira, right?
Oh, you know what? I'm seeing Goldschmidt as well with 26.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I
didn't
see that one.
But either way, I mean, hell of a season across the board for Adrian Gonzalez so far.
Yep, definitely. I mean, Cabrera's up here hitting 350. He seems to let me down so much, though. It's so weird. I mean, he just has those monster games when you're like least expecting them, but he's having a really nice season. Only 6 home runs so far. You got to think the power comes around a little bit more at some point, especially hitting in the middle of that lineup. You mentioned Goldschmidt already. He's having a really strong year. 8 home runs, hitting 346, 298 ISO. I mean, he's just been having a great year. Had a great series in Colorado earlier this week. Guy I've been talking about a ton on our podcast, Prince Fielder. Yep. Still hitting 342, only 2 home runs on the season, 126 ISO. You got to think that comes up to near 200 at some point. So, I mean, he's going to be trending in the right direction. Even if his batting average starts to come down while his power goes up, I mean, he's going to be providing some massive value at the prices that he's currently sitting at.
Yeah, and I think his ISO's actually been coming up because if I'm not mistaken, it was under either last week or the week before. It was under 100 because we were.
Yeah, last week it was like. Yeah, last week it was like 0.96, and it was way below that. The week when he had no home runs, I think we talked about him the week before, and he was at like something ridiculous, like 0.7 or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, he's starting to get it going. But like you said, I mean, hitting for average like he hasn't really done in his career. So you gotta love that. And Adam Lind, the righty masher, I mean, he's on a nice little hot streak right now. He's been batting cleanup for the Brewers, so you gotta.
Yeah, about the only guy hitting for the Brewers.
Yeah, I mean. It seems like Carlos Gomez kind of gave him a spark there for the first couple days, and then they kind of tailed back off. So maybe they get going. So, I mean, they're healthy now. You're not really missing anybody. Scooter Gennett back in the 2-hole.
Yep.
We'll see if he's actually going to hit like he did last year or if he's going to struggle like he did earlier this season. But, you know, that's a daunting offense eventually. But it's still an offense a lot of people have been targeting despite some big names. So.
Yeah, a couple guys that have been great cash game plays, having quietly nice seasons. Eric Hosmer and Freddie Freeman both hitting right around 320 here, 5 home runs each. Really similar 2020 run RBI totals. I mean, they've just been really strong cash game plays. They've just been so far behind these guys at the top, and they're so far ahead of some of these guys that cost less that they're not guys that I play very often. I mean, Freeman's come up a little bit in price, and I was playing him quite a bit early in the season as a cash game play. And it just hasn't been worth it lately, but he's still hitting. He just doesn't have the monster power numbers that you're going to get from a guy like Adrian Gonzalez or Goldschmidt or hopefully Cabrera at some point.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I mean, Hosmer is a guy that just always flies under the radar. Like you said, he's putting up almost the identical numbers to Freeman, who you see on tons of lineups every night. So definitely a guy to be monitoring moving forward for tournaments and cash games because, I mean, especially when he gets a righty, I mean, he's got a lot of power and he's underrated for sure.
Yeah, speaking of guys that are priced really cheap, Ike Davis is nice and high on this list, hitting 287. Not a huge power guy, which is what keeps his price down, but 15 runs scored is really solid for a guy that only has 2 home runs on the season, hitting in the middle of the order. So that's a nice price play most of the time. Another really similar guy to that is Joe Mauer, who the Twins offense has finally come around a little bit. He's not going to hit you home runs, but he can score some runs, get on base from the 3-hole for the Twins. So if he can get his batting average up to where we really want it to be in the low to mid 300s, I mean, he could have a nice year even without the home runs.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with Ike Davis, I mean, he's still minimum salary on FanDuel right now, which is just insane. And speaking of guys who are priced way too cheap in some places, Jose Abreu has been sitting right there at 3.6K for about a week, and he hasn't put up Jose Abreu type numbers, but you look across the board, I mean, 5 homers, 16 RBIs, 227 ISO, batting almost 280. He's still having a good season. We're just spoiled, I guess, by what he did breaking into the scene last year where he was just destroying the ball every night. Yeah,
he's a guy that you got to think the home runs are going to come around for, too. I mean, like you said, 227 ISO means making great contact. He has quite a few doubles on the year. At some point, those are going to turn into home runs, especially when it gets warmer in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Teixeira is another guy. He's got a monstrous ISO of 383 right now. Walking more than he's striking out. He's got 10 home runs on the season. I mean, he's another one of those guys that kind of falls under the cracks, you know. He's down there right below the elite guys, but a little bit more expensive than your punt guys at first base, which I know you and I don't like to punt first base anyway. But, you know, he's that guy where he's a great tournament play every night, especially when he's at home, facing a righty, especially bad righties. I mean, it doesn't take much for him to stem one of the seats in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his big problem is his volatility, like you mentioned. I mean, he has a lot of 0 for 4s. He's only hitting 223 right now, but when he's making contact, he's crushing the ball. Yeah. I mean, I think he's leading the league in home runs, isn't he? Didn't he pass Cruz the other day?
I know that Hanley Ramirez has 10. I think Cruz has 12 now.
Oh, Cruz has 12
now? The other day.
Oh yeah, you're right. He
But
tied him at 10 is what it was, and
yeah,
then Cruz hit 2 the day after. That's right.
but either way, I mean, right up there. I mean, considering he's batting 220, I mean that ISO of almost 400 is insane.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah,
A guy that's struggling so far, Edwin Encarnacion. Um, I mean, his ISO is only 144, 4 home runs though, 13 runs scored, 14 RBIs. I mean, he's gonna come around. Only 216 right now. You got to think this whole Blue Jays lineup gets it going. Russell Martin, like we mentioned, at catcher, really got it going. Jose Bautista's back now, starting to look a little bit better. They're in pretty good shape, I think, going forward.
yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it before. I mean, when he gets hot, he goes on tears where he hits 5 homers in a week, things like that. So definitely, once he gets going, monitor him. And I mean, his price has been outside of really good matchups where DraftKings is pricing up the whole Blue Jays team. I mean, he's been under $4,000 on FanDuel. So when he gets going on one of those hot streaks, someone's going to get paid out pretty nicely when they roster him. All right, let's move on here to second base, where these top two guys just seem to be in the conversation every single night. D. Gordon, Mr. On-Base Percentage, 461 OBP for Mr. D. Gordon. I mean, it's insane to me. I still don't even believe that this is the same player we saw last year who couldn't get on base. He couldn't get on base the year before. I mean, it was, I don't know if there was actually talk for the Dodgers, but he was batting down in the lineup there for a little while because he just couldn't get on base. I mean, he was a base stealer who never was on base, and it was just no purpose. But I mean, the way that he's hitting this year, I don't know who he worked with in the off season. I mean, maybe I don't know, but whoever he worked with did a hell of a job because this kid is hitting everything now.
Yeah, I mean, he's hitting 437, which makes his batting average on balls in play at 491 not even look that high, but that's ridiculously high too.
Yeah,
but his speed, his speed is a huge attribute in that though, because I mean, if he's putting the ball in the right spots in the infield, he's getting on base. I mean, I hope he does this all season because it's been really fun to watch. 12 stolen bases already. Yep. I know the guy you're going to mention next, Jose Altuve, has 11. Yep. Both of these guys have looked absolutely fantastic. Most of the time, I'm not even looking past them at second base.
Yep.
3 home runs for Altuve already. 139 ISO is pretty strong for a guy that doesn't have a monstrous amount of power.
Yeah, he's like 5'8".
Yeah, right. He's hitting 336, 475 slugging, 135 WRC plus. I mean, his numbers look great right now. And he started off the season really cold too, so it's great to see him get it going. I think he's going to keep it going most of the year.
Yeah, and Altuve, I mean, we've seen this before from Altuve. I mean, I think he won the batting title last year. So, I mean, he's a guy he's just a tremendous hitter. And I'm with you, I mean, especially cash games. Each night I look, if Altuve's against the lefty, I'll usually pay for him. If he's not, it's D. Gordon, and then I move on, unless there's some crazy cheap punt and I have to have expensive pitching. But I usually try to find a way to work one of these two guys in my lineup every single night.
Yeah, definitely. The third guy on this list is probably the only other guy I've played at second base over the last 2 weeks is Devin Travis. It's a guy I've been looking at quite a bit. He's just been fantastic as a young guy for the Blue Jays. I mean, he's another huge part of that lineup right now. And he's down to 297. He had been way over 300 for a while, so he's cooled off a bit. But 7 home runs from second base. I think he's 2 home runs ahead of the next closest guy. I think Pedroia's got 5. And, I mean, he's providing a ton of power. 277 ISO. Let me look and see who's second in ISO at second base, because now I actually want to know that.
I mean,
yeah, 193 from Steven Drew, who's got somehow 4 home runs.
Yeah, out of the 8 hole.
Yeah.
So he's the only playable guy with power.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Howie Kendricks and Pedroia are the next 2 guys on here, really, and neither one of them is a true power hitter. I mean, Pedroia's got 5 home runs already. This might be his best month of the season, home run-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And Devin Travis, I mean, he's got 23 RBIs, and I know he wasn't always batting leadoff. It's been since Jose Reyes went down, but he's batting near the top of that order and still has that many RBIs. So that right there tells you how well he's hitting the ball. And he's still too cheap. I mean, this is the guy you got to be targeting if you're not paying up for these top 2 options, because he's right around 3 to 3.5K on both FanDuel and DraftKings like every night now.
Yep, definitely. Ian Kinsler is a guy that's still scoring a ton of runs, 19 runs scored on the season, hit in front of the nice meat of that Tigers order. He's up to 292 finally, which is great to see because he just doesn't have power anymore. Yeah. 0 home runs on the season, 071 ISO. I mean, he's going to be a strong play because of his runs scored at times, but now that he's lost a lot of that power, he's not a fun guy to play, that's for sure.
No, and he's a guy where, if you're looking at your head-to-head matches and you see you have D. Gordon or Jose Altuve and the other person paid a similar price for Ian Kinsley, you love that every night. I
Yeah.
love seeing that because those three guys have been the most expensive guys almost every single night. And then, Kinsler more often than not, yeah, he gets on base, but he's like 2.5 to 3.5 FanDuel points, where Gordon and Altuve are like 5 to 8 to 10.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean there's a way to exploit some people right there. Take advantage of Gordon and Altuve there instead.
One guy at second base we've been kind of harping on over the last couple of weeks is Jason Kipnis. Has finally gotten it turned around. He's looked much better lately. Has 3 home runs, 2 steals now, up to 268. Finally got his walk percentage up above 5%, which felt like it took forever. I think he's at 7.3 now. The Indians need to get the rest of that offense going a little bit, but now that he's hitting, I feel a little bit better about playing him from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that we expect big things out of, but he hasn't really got it going. Maybe it was a confidence thing, maybe it was kind of mental, but certainly over the past week or so, he's really been getting it going. And Brian Dozier's a guy I like to target in tournaments a lot against bad lefties. He's got a decent amount of power for a middle infielder, and FanDuel's had him priced really cheap. He's been under 3K for a while here, 145 ISO, and I mean his batting average on balls in play is only 276. So you think that 236 average is going to be bumping up here quite a bit, and 21 runs scored actually is the highest among all, even higher than Devin Travis. So that tells you right there, people think the Twins aren't hitting the ball. That is a mistake. The Twins
they've been going crazy over the last 2 weeks. They started really slow, and they've been much, much better. Before we move on here, let's mention Chase Utley and
-1
-1 weighted runs created.
We're gonna have to start keeping track because I think he was at 2 last week.
I know. I want to see if he can get any low. Every week I'm like, there's no way he can get any lower.
Yeah,
and he's done it every week so far. He hasn't even been in the lineup that much this week either.
No, he's finding a way to be terrible from the bench. And Brandon Phillips was another guy we had picked on for his ISO, but he finally hit a home run, so it's up from 0. So kudos to him. He's actually hitting pretty well over the past week, but still not somebody I go out of my way to play. I mean, ever outside of Red Stacks.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could play defensive stats, I'd be all about it, but you obviously cannot do that. All right, let's move on here to shortstop, where it's usually a pretty terrible position most nights. Jose Iglesias still leading the league in batting average there, but usually batting 9th. He's been getting some days off now, and he was up around 400, and he's really, really cooled off now. Dropped about 50 points over the past week or so. But Freddie Galvis is an interesting guy who has been getting some spots in the 2-hole. Down from the 8. I think it depends on if it's lefty or righty. I haven't looked too much into that, but when he's been batting second, I like him because he's been about bare minimum punt most places, right around 3K at DraftKings. So, I mean, he's a decent hitter, doesn't have any power, 0.64 ISO, but he puts the ball in play, 5% walk rate, just an 8.9% strikeout rate you really like. So, as far as cash game punts go, I like Galvis when he's in the 2-hole because you know he's at least going to give you at-bats and give you a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
Troy Tulowitzki, let's talk about him for a second. What the hell is this guy doing? Because he is the most expensive guy every single night. After that decent first week, he's just been bad. I mean, 2.1% walk rate is embarrassing. 20.6% strikeout rate's too high for him. His ISO 191 is okay, but I mean, you're looking at Zach Cozart with a higher ISO than Troy Tulowitzki right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's even batting 356 on balls in play. So his 298 average is all well and good if you're the Rockies. He's getting on base, it seems. But from a DFS perspective, as the most expensive guy on the board, sometimes at any position, he's just not worth playing right now.
Right. I mean, I keep expecting him to turn it around. I've been playing him 2-3 times a week at least in cash games, probably. Thinking he's a good play. Luckily, he got rained out enough times this week that I didn't play him that much.
Save your money.
Yeah, and he just hasn't been worth it. I think he's going to turn it around. Like we mentioned, I think it was last week. They haven't really played that many games in Colorado yet. They finally got 6 in a row this week, I believe. But they only played, 3 or 4 of them?
Yeah.
So I think at some point he's going to get in a groove at Coors and have a nice season. But I'm not ready to pay up for him right now. I need to see it first at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And a guy that's been a great cheap play is Andrelton Simmons, showing a little bit of power. Been batting second ahead of Freddie Freeman, 170 ISO now. The guy's got 20 runs scored, 15 RBI. And this is a Braves team that, we all expected nothing from, but they've been one of the better hitting teams in the league somehow.
Yep.
And, Simmons batting second, you got that great protection behind you. And his strikeout rate is insane, 4.3%, walking almost twice as much as he's striking out. He makes for a great, great cash game when he's batting second.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving down to the bottom of this list, two guys that I've played way too many times. Asdrubal Cabrera and Jimmy Rollins, both hitting under 200. Rollins at least has a nice 143 ISO. He hit a couple home runs over the past 10 days here. He's looked better. I think he's going to get it going. I like him more in the 2-hole at this point. I mentioned that on a couple of our podcasts this week, hitting behind Peterson. So I'm thinking he gets it turned around. Cabrera, I don't really have much faith in. He was hitting third for a while, and that's what kept getting him in my lineup. Now that he's in the 6-7 hole most of the time, I just don't see a reason to do anything with him until he gets it going.
Yeah, and what's unfortunate for Jimmy Rollins is that Jock Peterson either hits a home run or strikes out. So
Yeah.
he's never going to have RBI opportunities until later on in the game when the lineup comes back around. So
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean it's been one of those things. He's just been underpriced. It's just been baiting us to take him most nights, and
Yep.
I've fallen for the trap on all the wrong nights. I think I hit one of his home run nights so far.
Yeah, I got that one too, I think.
Yeah.
I played him like 6 days in a row at one point, though, so he owed me by that day.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, either that or he's gonna have to write you a check by that point. All right, let's go ahead and move on here to third base, where there's been some good options, not a lot of great options. It's been one of those spots where you don't mind punting sometimes, but surprising guy up near the top is Yunel Escobar. Guy's hitting pretty well. Never been a big power guy. 0.94 ISO, but the guy's batting over 300, 302. He's batting second for the Nationals, who are starting to get it going.
Yep.
He puts the ball in play, doesn't strike out a ton, 11.4%. And he's one of those guys who's really cheap, and you've got to like that lineup spot with those big bats behind him. And I think that's a key that people don't pay much attention to, where they're trying to get their third baseman or get their second base, whatever their punt may be, and they don't take into consideration the lineup spot. But I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely. Another guy that's been flying under the radar a little bit, which doesn't usually happen with Rockies, is Nolan Arenado. Has been having a really strong season. He was hurt a little bit early in the season. He's a couple games behind everybody else, but 6 home runs, 15-plus runs and RBIs. Hitting 295 right now on just a 268 batting average on balls in play. I think he's going to come around and have a really nice year. I mean, his strikeout rate is ridiculous at 7.9%.
Yeah.
He's putting the ball in play a ton. Obviously not seeing a lot of pitches. He's a guy that loves to jump on the first couple pitches, only a 5% walk rate. So you're not going to get a lot of walks out of him as far as on-base percentage goes. But, I mean, with how low his batting average on balls in play, I mean, he could easily hit 320, 330 this year, I think.
Oh, yeah, and considering his low strikeout rate and that high power, I mean,
Yep.
that's a rare combination right there. That tells
Exactly.
you right there that he's got a lot of good things going for him. But
Yep.
a guy who hasn't somehow, we look at all of the qualified third basemen, and the last guy you would think that does not have a home run, who is the only qualified third baseman with no home runs, Chris Bryant.
Yeah.
Mr. Minor League Power over here.
Yeah, right. He's been frustrating because, I mean, everything he's been putting in play has been falling, though, which is a crazy thing. He's got a 463 batting average on balls in play, but his ISO is just .09.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think the power comes around at some point. He hit for way too much power in the minor leagues to not do that in the major leagues at some point. You got to think he's just getting acclimated a little bit. But the great thing is he's been pretty productive while he's getting acclimated, because a 435 on base percentage, he's got a crazy 20% walk rate right now.
Yeah.
He's striking out a ton. He's taking way too many pitches, I think, is part of the problem with his power. Like we just mentioned with Arenado, he's jumping on balls early, hitting for a ton of power, where Bryant's defending the plate a lot at this point because he's seeing 4, 5, 6 pitches every single at bat. And it's making it tough for him to make really good contact because, I mean, he's just trying not to strike out a lot of times.
Yeah, I tend to think that maybe he's feeling some pressure. I mean, obviously, everybody talking about him. They're talking about how he was the second coming of the greatest hitters of all time, and he's the next Mike Trout, but in the infield, and all this hoopla with him. And maybe, I mean, the Cubs aren't scoring a ton of runs, so maybe he really
Right.
is feeling some pressure and just trying to get on base. But either way, there's no way those numbers don't turn around. I don't necessarily think that he's God, but I think that he'll be fine this year.
One guy who got really hot this week was Evan Longoria.
Yeah.
I mean, his walk rate's up at 15%. Kind of feels like Chris Bryant before, can't talk. It kind of feels like the situation Chris Bryant's in right now is what he was doing early in the season. He was seeing a ton of pitches, walking a ton, striking out, looking a ton. Was having a lot of batted ball success, but it wasn't really translating for him. He's up to 284 now. Like we mentioned, a couple home runs recently. I think he's going to have a really nice season. Looks like he's seen the ball really well. I think he's going to get this average way up and have a really nice year.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And there's one more guy I want to talk about, a guy I love to play in tournaments due to his high ISO. Doesn't hit for average, but you're not playing this guy to hit for average. Luis Valbuena has 7 homers so far on the season. He is striking out 20% of the time, but you really don't care about that. The crazy thing is 243 ISO, but 176 BABIP. That right there is telling you he's hitting the ball hard, but he's hitting the ball right at people. I mean, he's a fly ball hitter, so I'm sure a lot of them are long fly balls. But, I mean, when this guy gets a hold of one, I mean, it goes a long way. So I love him in tournaments.
Right.
All right, let's go ahead and move on here to the outfield. Final position for us here, and there's not a lot of surprises up here at the top. I mean, it's pretty much, you look at the top, it's kind of chalky like what you think it would be. Adam Jones certainly cooling off from that ridiculous start he had. I mean, I don't think he has a home run in 2 weeks now, something like that. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But Jacoby Ellsbury, now second among outfielders in batting average. The guy has had a ridiculously good stretch while showing no power. 0.53 ISO. I mean, he was never a huge power guy, but he's a guy that had some pop in his bat. But he's got 11 stolen bases, 22 runs. I mean, 417 batting average on balls in play is obviously high, but not much higher than his average. And, I mean, the speed right there certainly helps him. And those Yankees big bats have been bringing him home a lot.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a huge difference when you're a speed guy that you generally just have a higher batting average on balls in play because of that. And like when you're not hitting for a lot of power, you're just not overswinging a lot. You're just making good contact. So I think he's pretty sustained. I mean, he's not going to hit 360 all year, but his overall value is going to be pretty sustainable.
Yeah.
Michael Brantley's gotten really hot lately, up to 341 batting average. I'd like to see the home runs come around a little bit more. I think he hit his first 2 in one game the other day. Once he starts hitting some home runs, he's going to be in really good shape. He's already got 4 steals on the year. He's a bit. I can't talk right now for some reason. He's a bit behind on some of the at-bats because he missed a bunch of games at the beginning of the season with an injury, but he's really looking good right now.
Yeah, and his walk rate is 3 times as high as his strikeout rate. I mean, nobody talks about this guy as a hitter, but he is a hell of a hitter. 3.3% strikeout rate is just ridiculous.
I know, he's insane.
Yeah,
he's so good.
No one talks about this kid. It drives me nuts. I don't get it. But, hey, it keeps him lower owned for me in tournaments, so I can't be too mad about it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, well, a couple other guys, obviously, Nelson Cruz, blah, blah, blah. And I guess we were wrong. He has 14 home runs now. He's over here sneaking extra home runs that we didn't even realize. But,
man, he's one of those guys you put in your lineup, and like 95% of the time you're like, all right, I'll take that.
Yeah. I mean, he gets on base because you get some of these pitchers, and I wouldn't want to pitch to the guy. I'd be like, go ahead and take your base, man. I'm not going to throw at you, but I'm going to throw it off the plate if you want to chase it. But, I mean, 423 ISO, enough said about him. Mike Trout, not having – I mean, I think he's having a great season, but maybe people expect him more. He's striking out 23% of the time, which you don't like. But batting 298, an ISO of 288, 8 homers, 6 steals, 24 runs scored. I think Mike Trout's doing just fine this year.
Yeah, definitely having a solid year. All 3 of these Diamondbacks outfielders are having really nice years, actually. Yeah. Enciarte, Pollock, kind of the more unknown guys, and then Trumbo, who everyone's been playing lately. Is having a real nice year. He's got a couple home runs this week, up to 4 on the year, 15 RBI, hitting 304. He's just in a really solid spot right now in that Diamondbacks lineup that basically everyone's hitting right now for them.
Yeah. I mean, top to bottom, they're definitely scoring a ton of runs. If you're looking down here at the bottom, Jose Bautista still there, mired in his slump under 200. He's hitting for power, 259. He's walking quite a bit, 17%. I tend to think part of it's got to be that shoulder issue because they keep talking about how his shoulder's bothering him, and he just doesn't seem comfortable at the plate. I mean, like you mentioned with some of these other guys, he's taking a lot of pitches, which makes you think that he hasn't. Jose Bautista was always a swinger. He was never the guy that's over here walking 17% of the time. He's the guy who wants to hit the ball and hit it hard. So I'm not saying he's unplayable for me right now, but I mean, at his price tag, the way that he's taking a lot of pitches, you're not paying $5,000 for Jose Bautista for him to walk to first base.
Yeah, exactly. A couple other guys struggling. George Springer is a guy that got hot for a couple games and then kind of disappeared again. He got hurt a little bit. Still having a pretty decent season with 10 stolen bases and 4 home runs, but only hitting 192. Yeah. Only a 242 batting average on balls in play. You got to think that turns around a little bit, especially with the ISO being up around 180.
An interesting guy is Shin-Soo Choo. He's second to last, but he's had a really nice week. Obviously, he's getting way too old to steal bases because he hasn't stolen one yet this year. But his ISO's almost 200, and that Rangers offense been a great sneaky stack in GPPs recently. They're starting to get it going.
Yeah, definitely. Another guy dealing with an injury is Jay Bruce, dealing with a back leg injury on his swing, and he can't get anything going right now. Somehow he's still producing some decent power with 5 home runs, has stolen 2 bases. I'm hoping he gets it turned around because I loved watching him play when he was healthy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, some of the peripheral numbers are there. The batting average on balls in play is obviously low. He's only hitting 170 overall. It's going to be low. You think he gets it turned around a little bit, especially with the guys hitting around him in the lineup right now, with Frazier playing pretty well, Votto hitting right in the middle of that lineup too. It should get him some decent pitches to hit. I think he'll be in good shape by the end of the season if he can somehow get that leg healthy.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As a Reds fan, I'm really hoping Bruce comes around as well. And always been a high strikeout guy, so that's not going anywhere. But like you said, if some of those balls start dropping, I mean, there's some significant shifts with Jay Bruce. I mean, if you ever watched him play, you know that you see 3 infielders on the right side of the infield, and they dare him to hit the ball down the left field line. He's never going to be a big average hitter. He doesn't do that.
Right.
But I mean, his power in that ballpark puts him in play in tournaments for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, that's going to wrap things up. Thanks for checking us out here on the weekends. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. All of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com, and we'll see you on Monday.